Gold plates, angelic messengers, and a magic rock in a hat. That's the official story of how the Book of Mormon came to pass. But what if, instead of a divine miracle, it was a literary mashup with a dash of fraud? Enter Lars Nielsen, legendary Ensign Peak Advisor's whistleblower, with his new book, How the Book of Mormon Came to Pass, a skeptical deep dive that throws celestial translation under the bus and revises one of Mormonism's earliest conspiracy theories, the Solomon Rigdon theory. Now, the core argument here is that Joe didn't write it alone, or at all. Nielsen's central claim? Well, Joseph Smith wasn't some divine translator. He was more like the face of the operation, while others were working from behind the scenes. The Book of Mormon, Nielsen argues, was pre-written, plagiarized, and then cobbled together, and Joseph just played the role as charismatic frontman. The real brains? Possibly Sidney Rigdon, and maybe a dead guy named Solomon Spalding. That's right, Spalding was the posthumous co-author, and here's how it supposedly went down. Solomon Spalding, a former preacher with a flair for fiction, wrote an unpublished manuscript in the early 1800s about ancient Israelites coming to the Americas. It included wars and migrations and religious civilizations, the usual Nephite and Lamanite stuff. That manuscript sat collecting dust in Pittsburgh in a print shop. Now enter Sidney Rigdon, conveniently hanging around in that very area, and he is alleged to have found it, tweaked it, added Jesus, and somehow connected with Joseph Smith long before the official story says that they met. Together, or perhaps through a chain of intermediaries, the manuscript morphs into the Book of Mormon. Basically, Joseph Smith is the guy reading out of the hat, but someone else may have written the script. What Nielsen brings to the table is that, unlike the old-timey Spalding theory, Nielsen tries to sharpen the argument for modern skeptics. He points to stylistic overlaps between Spalding's known writings and the Book of Mormon's structure and themes. Nielsen argues that Rigdon's abrupt appearance in Mormonism with theological depth and doctrinal influence seems far too convenient. And historical inconsistencies are in the timeline, like how Rigdon and Smith somehow instantly clicked as spiritual soulmates with a fully formed religious worldview. And of course, the basic question here: how does a barely literate farm boy translate a 500-page King James-sounding epic almost overnight? Well, the short answer is that he doesn't, well, at least not without help. But there are problems, of course. To be fair, this theory isn't airtight. The only surviving Spalding manuscript doesn't read much like the Book of Mormon, and there's no hard evidence that Rigdon ever saw the Spalding manuscript. And most of the testimonies supporting the theory were gathered decades later, and often from people with a beef against the Mormon Church. So Nielsen's not offering a smoking gun, more like a trail of suspicious receipts. And here's the final sum up. In Nielsen's view, the Book of Mormon isn't divine revelation. It's a religious fanfic Frankenstein, cobbled together from Spalding's fiction, Rigdon's theories, and Smith's charisma. Was it a translation? Heck no. Was it a miracle? Please. Was it one of the most successful literary hoaxes in American history? Now that's more like it.